You're upset.
So you don't care that I'm upset?
Who's upset?
So you just walk away from me?
Sorry, but you need to
I would not expect anything less than you wanting to go. So please let me know. Because I'm not playing that again.
She thought she knew everything about him, but in one gut punch moment, Elise's world flipped. Joshua's secret wasn't some tiny white lie. It was the kind of bombshell that makes you question every late-night text, every "I'll call you back," every time he said, "Trust me." Elise found out Joshua had been living with Nat, his so-called friend, and the shock hit her like a slap. You could see it in her eyes, the way her face froze, the way her voice cracked when she asked him why he never mentioned it. The air in the room turned heavy, thick with the kind of tension that makes you want to look away, but you can't. Joshua tried to play it cool, but his hands were shaking, and his words stumbled out, half excuse, half apology. He said it wasn't a big deal, that Nat was just helping him out, that he didn't want to make Elise worry. But that's the thing. When someone hides something this big, it's never about the secret itself. It's about what else they might be hiding. Elise's mind started racing, connecting dots that maybe weren't even there. But how could she not? She'd flown halfway across the world for this guy, put her heart on the line, and now she's wondering if she's been played for a fool. Welcome to Reality Sport. I'm Oliva, and if you're as shocked as Elise, hit that subscribe button and drop your wildest theory in the comments, because this story is about to get messier than a 90-day Fiance tell-all. Elise's trust wasn't just bruised, it was shattered. She'd been burned before, and every alarm bell in her head was ringing. Was Joshua using her? Was Nat more than a friend? Why did he wait until now to come clean? The questions kept piling up, each one heavier than the last. Joshua tried to explain, but every word sounded like another excuse. He said he didn't want to scare her off, that he was waiting for the right time, but Elise wasn't buying it. Her voice got sharper, her questions more pointed, and Joshua started to retreat, his eyes darting to the floor, his answers getting shorter. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in, and neither of them knew what to say next. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's cracked, every little thing starts to look suspicious. Elise replayed every conversation in her head, searching for signs she missed, wondering if Joshua's late nights were really about work, or if Nat was always there in the background. She wanted to believe him, but her gut told her something was off. Was she being paranoid, or was this the moment she'd look back on and realize she should have run? The stakes couldn't be higher. Her heart, her pride, her sense of safety. And as Joshua tried to patch things up with promises and half smiles, Elise was already bracing for the next secret to drop. Because if he could hide this, what else was he keeping from her? And if she couldn't trust him now, could she ever trust him again? The shockwave had only just hit, and the aftershocks were coming. Sleep didn't come easy for Elise that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind dragged her back to the moment Joshua's secret slipped out. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every awkward pause, every time he'd brushed off her questions about his living situation. The room felt colder, emptier, like the trust she'd brought with her had leaked out through the cracks. She tried to tell herself she was overreacting, that maybe she was reading too much into things, but the pit in her stomach wouldn't let her rest. Every red flag she'd ignored before now flashed in neon. The vague answers, the last-minute changes of plan, the way he always seemed to have a reason for not picking up the phone when she called late at night. It all felt so obvious now, and she hated herself for not seeing it sooner. When the sun finally crept through the blinds, Elise reached out for Joshua, hoping for some comfort, some reassurance that this was all in her head. But the other side of the bed was empty, cold, untouched. No note, no text, nothing but silence. Her heart sank. She checked her phone, hoping for a message, but there was nothing. Not even a good morning. The anxiety twisted tighter. Was he with Nat? Was he avoiding her because he knew she'd want answers? Elise's mind spun out of control, every scenario worse than the last. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to remind herself that she was strong, that she'd survived worse, but the fear of being lied to again was suffocating. Her thoughts drifted back to her past, to the last time she'd trusted someone who promised her the world and then left her with nothing but broken dreams. She remembered the way her ex had hidden things, the way she'd ignored her instincts until it was too late. The pain of that betrayal still lingered, a scar that never quite healed. Now, with Joshua, every familiar pattern felt like a warning sign. She wondered if she was cursed to repeat the same mistakes, to fall for the same kind of man, to always be the one left picking up the pieces. The fear of history repeating itself was almost worse than the fear of the truth. She paced the apartment, her mind racing, her hands shaking. She wanted to call Joshua, to demand answers, but she was afraid of what he might say, or worse, what he wouldn't say. She checked his location, scrolled through old messages, searching for clues, for anything that might explain why he'd left without a word. Was he running from her or from his own guilt? Was he with Nat, laughing about how easy it was to keep her in the dark? Or was he genuinely clueless about how much his secrecy was tearing her apart? The uncertainty gnawed at her. Each unanswered question another crack in the foundation of their relationship. She tried to distract herself, to focus on anything but the ache in her chest, but every little thing reminded her of Joshua. The coffee mug he always used, the shirt he'd left draped over the chair, the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air. It all felt like evidence in a case she didn't want to solve. She wondered if she was losing her mind, if she was being too dramatic, but the fear wouldn't let go. She needed answers, needed to know if she was fighting for something real or if she was the only one still holding on. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Would Joshua finally tell her the truth? Or was this only the beginning of a much bigger lie? The front door clicked open, and Elise's heart jumped, a mix of hope and dread twisting inside her. Joshua stepped in, keys jangling, eyes darting away from her as if he could already feel the storm brewing. She didn't wait for him to settle in. The words tumbled out, sharp and raw, her voice trembling but determined. Where were you? Why did you leave without saying anything? Joshua barely met her gaze, mumbling something about work, about needing to get an early start, about not wanting to wake her. He tried to sound casual, but his tone was off, too rehearsed, too careful. Elise pressed harder, her questions coming faster, her suspicion growing with every vague answer. What work? With who? Why didn't you text? Joshua's patience thinned, his jaw tightening as he insisted he'd been at the marina, helping a client with a boat. He rattled off details, but Elise caught the hesitation, the way he avoided specifics, the way his story shifted when she pressed for more. She watched him closely, searching his face for any sign of the truth, any crack in the mask. Every time he dodged a question, her anger flared hotter. She asked if he'd seen Nat, if he'd gone to her place, if there was something he wasn't telling her. Joshua's answers got shorter, his frustration bubbling up. He snapped that he was tired of being interrogated, that she was making a big deal out of nothing, that she needed to trust him. But trust doesn't grow in the dark, and Elise felt herself slipping further away with every half-truth. She remembered all the times she'd given people the benefit of the doubt, only to be blindsided by betrayal. She wasn't about to let that happen again. The room felt like it was shrinking, the air thick with everything left unsaid. Joshua tried to change the subject, to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but Elise wouldn't let him off the hook. She demanded to see proof, show me the texts, the calls, anything that proves you were where you say you were. Joshua bristled, accusing her of not trusting him, of being paranoid, but Elise stood her ground. She needed answers, not apologies. She needed to know if she was fighting for a future or clinging to a fantasy. Joshua's defensiveness only made her more suspicious. Why was he so quick to shut her down? Why did he keep dodging the simplest questions? Was he hiding something? Or was he just tired of the fight? Elise's mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. She wondered if she was pushing too hard, if she was driving him away, but the fear of being lied to was stronger than the fear of losing him. She watched him fumble for words, watched the guilt flicker across his face, and wondered if this was the moment everything would finally come crashing down. If Joshua was lying, Elise knew she'd have to make a choice: keep digging for the truth or walk away before she lost herself completely. The tension hung between them, electric and dangerous, neither willing to back down. And as Joshua turned away, refusing to meet her eyes, Elise felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Was this the end? Or just another beginning of secrets and suspicion? The answer was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and Elise wasn't about to stop until she found it. Joshua, desperate to change the mood, suggested they hit the beach for a surfing lesson, pitching it as a fresh start, a way to shake off the tension and just have fun together. Elise hesitated, but the idea of salty air and crashing waves sounded better than another hour trapped in that apartment with questions swirling around her head. She agreed, hoping maybe the ocean could wash away some of the doubt, or at least give her a break from the constant second-guessing. The drive to the beach was quiet, both of them staring out the window, lost in their own thoughts. The silence only broken by Joshua's forced attempts at small talk. He pointed out landmarks, cracked a joke about the weather, but Elise could feel the strain in every word. She smiled when she was supposed to, but her mind was still stuck on everything that had happened, every answer he dodged, every time he'd looked away instead of looking her in the eye. On the sand, Joshua tried to play the part of the carefree boyfriend, showing off his board, teasing Elise about her balance, laughing a little too loudly at his own jokes. Elise went along with it, letting herself get caught up in the moment, but every time she looked at him, she wondered if he was really present or just putting on a show. The lesson itself was a mess of tangled limbs and splashes, Elise wiping out more times than she could count, Joshua cheering her on from the shallows. For a little while, it almost felt normal, like they were just another couple on vacation, not two people teetering on the edge of a breakup. But even as she laughed at her own clumsy attempts to stand up on the board, Elise couldn't shake the feeling that they were both pretending, both trying to outrun a conversation that was waiting for them back on shore. Afterward, as they sat on their towels, catching their breath and watching the waves roll in, the silence crept back in. Joshua reached for her hand, squeezing it gently, but Elise felt the distance between them, a gap that no amount of sunshine or salt water could close. She wanted to believe that a fun day could fix what was broken, that they could start over, but the cracks were still there, just beneath the surface. Every smile felt a little forced, every touch a little hesitant, as if they were both waiting for the other to say something real. Elise wondered if this was all just a Band-Aid, a temporary fix for a problem that ran much deeper. Could a single day of laughter and sun really erase the lies and the doubt, or were they both just stalling for time, hoping the truth wouldn't catch up with them? After the beach, Joshua suggested grabbing a bite, trying to keep the momentum of their reset alive. Elise, still damp from the ocean and hungry from the effort, agreed, hoping maybe a good meal would help them reconnect. They found a casual spot near the water, the kind of place with sticky tables and a menu full of fried everything. Joshua ordered quickly, barely glancing at Elise before rattling off his choices. When the food arrived, Elise stared at the plate in front of her. Fish, again. She told him more than once that she didn't like seafood, but here it was, staring back at her, another reminder that he wasn't really listening. Joshua dug in, oblivious, chatting about the waves and the weather, acting like everything was fine. Elise picked at her food, her appetite fading with every bite. She tried to join the conversation, but her words felt flat, her patience wearing thin. Every time Joshua talked over her or brushed off her comments, the frustration built. She thought about all the little things he'd missed, all the times he'd forgotten what mattered to her, and it stung more now, after everything that had happened. It wasn't just about the fish, it was about feeling invisible, about wondering if he ever really saw her at all. Joshua kept talking, barely noticing the tension simmering across the table. He cracked another joke, but Elise didn't laugh. She watched him, searching for any sign that he understood how much this hurt, but he seemed lost in his own world. The meal dragged on, every minute stretching the distance between them. Elise's mind kept circling back to the same questions. If he couldn't remember something as simple as her favorite food, how could she trust him with her heart? Was this what their future would look like? Her needs always an afterthought? Her voice drowned out by his? The silence between them grew heavier, filled with everything they weren't saying. Elise felt the urge to speak up, to finally let him know how much this all mattered, but the words caught in her throat. She wondered if she was being too sensitive, if she should just let it go, but the resentment was building, threatening to spill over. Joshua, still oblivious, reached for her hand, but Elise pulled away, her frustration finally showing. She looked at him, searching for any sign that he understood, but he only looked confused, as if he couldn't see the storm brewing right in front of him. Elise felt herself reaching a breaking point, teetering between swallowing her doubts and finally letting them out. Would she keep pretending? Or was this the moment she'd finally snap and demand the respect she deserved? That night, the apartment felt quieter than ever. The kind of silence that presses in on you and makes every thought louder. Elise sat on the edge of the bed, knees pulled to her chest, finally letting herself feel the weight of everything she'd been holding in. Joshua lingered in the doorway, unsure whether to come closer or give her space. But something in Elise's face told him it was time to stop pretending. She started talking, her voice soft but steady, telling him about the heartbreak she'd carried for years, the fiance she'd lost, the trust that was shattered, the way every new relationship felt like walking through a minefield. She admitted how hard it was to let anyone in, how every secret and every lie felt like a warning sign she couldn't ignore. Joshua listened, his expression shifting from confusion to something like understanding, and for the first time all day, he seemed present. He sat beside her, shoulders slumped, and shared his own story. He talked about his son, about the pain of being separated from him, about the mistakes he'd made, and the guilt that kept him up at night. He admitted he'd been struggling, that sometimes he didn't know how to handle the pressure, that he'd made choices he wasn't proud of. The honesty in his voice caught Elise off guard, and for a moment, the walls between them felt a little lower. But with every answer came more questions. Was Joshua's instability something she could live with? Could she trust him to be honest? Or would she always be waiting for the next secret to drop? The vulnerability was real, but so was the uncertainty. Later, Elise called her parents, needing someone to help her sort through the mess. She told them everything: Joshua's confession, her own fears, the way she felt stuck between wanting to believe in him and wanting to protect herself. Her parents listened, offering gentle advice. They reminded her not to judge Joshua by her past, to give him a chance to prove himself, but also to trust her instincts if something felt wrong. Elise nodded along, grateful for their support, but the decision still felt impossible. Her heart pulled her one way, her gut another, and she wondered if she'd ever feel sure again. Would she follow her parents' advice and give Joshua another chance? Or would she listen to the voice inside her that said some things can't be fixed? The answer was still out of reach, and the night stretched on, full of questions with no easy answers. Morning light crept through the curtains, but it brought no comfort. Joshua was already gone, the apartment echoing with his absence. Elise sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at her untouched coffee, her mind spinning with everything left unsaid. The silence felt heavier than ever, pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She scrolled through her phone, hoping for a message, a sign that Joshua cared enough to check in. But there was nothing. The emptiness stung, feeding the doubts that had been growing since the moment she learned about Nat. Every minute he stayed away, Elise's anxiety grew sharper, her thoughts circling back to every red flag, every moment she'd felt dismissed or ignored. She called her parents again, her voice shaky as she tried to explain how lost she felt. She told them about the night before, about Joshua's confession, about the way she wanted to believe him but couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Her parents listened patiently, offering comfort and perspective, but their words only seemed to make the decision harder. They reminded her of her strength, of everything she'd survived, but also warned her not to let old wounds cloud her judgment. Elise tried to take their advice to heart, but the fear of making another mistake was overwhelming. She wondered if she was being too hard on Joshua, if she was sabotaging something good out of habit, or if her instincts were right all along. Meanwhile, Joshua was at the gym, pushing himself harder than usual, trying to sweat out the frustration and confusion. He replayed the arguments in his head, the accusations, the endless questions. He felt trapped, like no matter what he said or did, it would never be enough for Elise. He wanted to be honest, to prove he wasn't the villain she imagined, but every conversation seemed to end in another fight. The pressure was getting to him, making him question whether this relationship was worth the constant stress. He missed the days when things felt easy, when Elise looked at him with trust instead of suspicion. Now, every look felt like a test, every word a potential landmine. Both of them were stuck, caught between hope and fear, love and doubt. Elise wondered if she should reach out, try to fix things one more time, or if it was better to walk away before she lost herself completely. Joshua wondered if he had the energy to keep fighting, or if it was time to let go. The distance between them had never felt wider, and the next move could change everything. Was this the moment they finally gave up, or would one of them make a last-ditch effort to save what was left? When Joshua finally walked back through the door, the tension was so thick it felt like the air itself might snap. Elise didn't wait for him to settle in or make small talk. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, eyes locked on his. This time, she wasn't going to let the conversation drift away or get buried under half-hearted apologies. She laid it all out, every doubt, every fear, every moment she'd felt invisible or lied to. She brought up Nat, the secrecy, the way Joshua always seemed to have an excuse ready but never a real answer. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. She told him how it felt to wake up alone, to feel like she was always the last to know, to wonder if she was being used or if she was just losing her mind. Joshua fired back, his frustration boiling over. He insisted he'd told her the truth, that Nat was only a friend, that he was doing his best to juggle work, his son, and this relationship. He said he was tired of being treated like a criminal, tired of every conversation turning into an interrogation. He admitted he'd made mistakes, that he should have been more upfront, but he also accused Elise of never giving him the benefit of the doubt. The argument spiraled, both of them raising their voices, both desperate to be heard but neither willing to give an inch. Then, in a moment that caught them both off guard, Joshua confessed he'd been scared. Scared of losing Elise, scared of not being enough, scared that if she saw how messy his life really was, she'd leave. Elise's anger softened, just for a second, as she remembered her own fears, her own scars. She admitted she was terrified too, terrified of being hurt again, of trusting the wrong person, of repeating the same painful patterns. The room went quiet, both of them breathing hard, the weight of everything they'd been carrying finally out in the open. All the seeds of doubt, all the little moments of hope, all the things they'd tried to ignore or explain away were right there between them. Elise looked at Joshua, searching his face for any sign that things could change, that trust could be rebuilt. Joshua looked back, waiting to see if she'd stay or walk away. The choice hung in the air, raw and real. Would one of them finally give up, or was there still something left to fight for? That night, the apartment felt like a stranger's house. Elise and Joshua retreated to separate rooms, the walls between them thicker than ever. The silence was sharp, every sound amplified. The creak of a floorboard, the distant hum of traffic, the soft click of a door closing. Elise lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word from their showdown. She wondered if she'd said too much or not enough, if she'd fought for the right things or let her fears do the talking. The anger had faded, replaced by a heavy sadness and a gnawing sense of regret. She thought about the girl she'd been when she first met Joshua, hopeful, open, willing to believe in second chances. Now she felt older, more guarded, and painfully aware of how quickly trust could slip through her fingers. She tried to make sense of what had happened, searching for lessons in the wreckage. She realized she'd been carrying her old wounds like armor, always ready for disappointment, always bracing for the next betrayal. Maybe she'd been too quick to judge, too slow to forgive, too afraid to let herself be vulnerable, but she also knew she deserved honesty, respect, and someone who listened when she spoke. She wondered if she'd ever find that balance, protecting her heart without building walls so high that no one could reach her. The thought made her ache, but it also made her determined not to lose herself, no matter how this story ended. In the other room, Joshua sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, replaying his own mistakes. He thought about all the times he'd chosen silence over honesty, all the moments he'd let fear dictate his choices. He wished he'd told Elise about Nat from the start, wished he'd trusted her enough to share the messy parts of his life instead of hiding them away. He saw now how his attempts to avoid conflict had only created more distance, how every secret had chipped away at the foundation they were trying to build. He wondered if it was too late to fix things, if Elise would ever believe in him again, or if he'd pushed her too far. The regret was sharp, but so was the hope that maybe, somehow, they could find their way back to each other. As the hours dragged on, both Elise and Joshua found themselves staring at their phones, fingers hovering over the screen, wanting to reach out but not knowing what to say. The silence between them was filled with questions. Could they forgive each other? Could they rebuild what was broken? Or was this the end of their story? The uncertainty was almost unbearable, but it was also a reminder that nothing was set in stone. There was still a chance, however small, that things could change. If you thought this was dramatic, wait until you see what's coming next. The fallout from Elise and Joshua's showdown is only the beginning. On the next episode, another couple faces a secret that could blow their relationship apart, and trust issues reach a whole new level. Don't miss it, because on Reality Sport, the drama never sleeps, and neither do the secrets.